Hello, this is Christian Okoye, former Kansas City Chiefs. You are listening to Grueling Truth.
Hey, welcome to the Grueling Truth. We are at the inaugural episode of the Great Sports Debate Show. We've got a few guys in here every week. We're going to debate 2 or 3 hot topics in the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, just about anything sports-wise except for soccer because, of course, that's not a sport. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in my co-hosts for this show. First up, you've heard him on with Dexter Carter on the San Francisco 49ers show. You've heard him with myself, Mark Cooper, on the NFL Pick'em show. Help me welcome to the great debate, Matt Andruscavage.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
All right, and next up, you have heard him on Out of Left Field every Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening with Graham McCown. Help me welcome Chris Furrey, who I just learned tonight. I always spell his name wrong. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. I think we finally found one thing that we can agree on before we even start the show, and that is that soccer is not a sport.
Yeah, it's not. Unless if it's girls playing it, it's okay. But guys should not be playing that. You just shouldn't. I mean, it's bad. All right, next up, we've got the new guy in the block. He was on his first show last week, which you can find on thegruelingtruth.net, where we did the NFL Super Bowl review show with former Cardinal All-Pro lineman Louis Sharp. Help me welcome to the show, Jamel Legister. How you doing, Jamel?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing tonight? Bear down.
Well, see, all the pressure's already off of me because last week I screwed your name up the entire show, so we got it down now. The debates tonight, we've got Jerry. Who was a better receiver, Jerry Rice or
Jerry
Randy Moss?
Oh boy.
Hey, will you be quiet for a second? I'm the one that's got to do all the talking, so of course I'm going to be the one that screws up. All right.
Jerry Moss could have been the greatest receiver of all time.
He could.
Or Randy Rice.
Or Randy Rice.
We will also be talking Babe Ruth versus Barry Bonds and Tom Brady versus Joe Montana. We're going to start off with Jerry Rice against Randy Moss. We're going to try not to interrupt each other here. We're going to try to not be like a Republican or Democratic presidential debate. We're going to try to let everybody finish their thought, and then we'll go ahead and give our rebuttal. So we're going to start off with Jamel. I nailed your name again, but I had to think about it. Who you got, Rice or Moss?
I'm going Moss.
Can you tell us why?
For 2 reasons. Absolutely. I'm going Moss because it was a verb. You see little kids outside throw the ball around, what do they say? I'm Mossing the guy. They don't say I'm Odella guy. They don't say I'm Ricing the guy. They say I'm Mossing the guy. 2, when he came in, changed football in the sense that you stop looking at guys who are problems. You say, let's give them a try. 6'4", 210 pounds, 4.25 speed, probably hands the size of his face mask. Who covered him one-on-one? I saw Jerry Rice get shut down by Deion Sanders, Rod Woodson. He had his down games. His team could win a game 55-3 without him making any impact. There weren't too many games that Randy Moss didn't make an impact and his team won. That's going to be my argument.
Except for big games. Playoff games, no Super Bowls, I think. That'd be mine.
Nope.
I will go to Matt next. Matt?
Well, I'm going to go Jerry Rice, and I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I'm not going to bury anybody in statistics, although I think that's one thing you certainly can do when you're talking Jerry Rice. You can bury anybody in just endless amounts of records and stats, but that's not going to be my argument tonight. Jerry Rice, to me, you talked about the best big game receiver in the history of the league. He has made more plays in playoff games, more game-ending plays than anybody I've ever seen. Now, I know there's a lot of great receivers, and I respect a ton of these guys. But Randy Moss, I don't even think he's in the conversation simply because of, okay, he never led the league in yards or receptions. He really has no statistical comparison to Rice, but then you go into he's a terrible teammate, takes plays off like crazy. You could get in his head so fast that the moment he gets frustrated, he'll walk off the field. And that's why he was never great in playoff games. But there's a lot more to be said. I'll let Chris go next.
Okay, Chris?
Well, I'm going to go with Jerry Rice too. And it's a pretty simple choice for me. As Jamel said before we started the show, numbers don't lie. And numbers don't lie. I mean, Jerry Rice, has 22,000-plus career receiving yards. Randy Moss has just over 15. 197 touchdowns in Jerry Rice's storied career. 156 for Mr. Randy Moss. And the reason that Randy Moss was so instrumental in all of his team's wins, like you said, there's not a game that goes by that Randy Moss didn't make a mark on. That's because he played for the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, he didn't play for the dynastic San Francisco 49ers of the 1980s and 90s. Okay, that was a team that was built to destroy all comers, and they did. And Jerry Rice still managed to put up numbers that will never be touched. Randy Moss would have to average his season average of just over 1,000 yards every year for 7 more years to equal the number of yards that Jerry Rice accrued over his career. Oh, and 3 Super Bowl rings.
All right. I don't even think it's a debate, Jamel. I mean, Rice could go over the middle and catch the ball. He could go deep and catch the ball. He blocked as a wide receiver. The big thing with Randy Moss was at the 2000 championship game where he completely shut it down, as did his team, and got destroyed by Kerry Collins and the New York Giants. I don't think you can call a guy on Jerry Rice's level if he can't do something in a big game.
I mean, again, numbers don't lie. I can't argue with the numbers. Again, throwing Joe Montana throwing you the ball in a great system, the tank that he played for, it's just going to get you open.
Well, Randy Moss did
who was
play
throwing
with Tom Brady and guys like
who was
that.
throwing him in his best season? Tom Brady.
Yep. I think his best season was 03. Minus the touchdowns, I'll say his best season was 03.
You mean 11? You probably mean 04.
I'll say, look, 111 catches, 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. I'll take away
that was
those
Culpepper's best season, and he was pretty good too.
Absolutely.
For a couple years, I think Culpepper was
Randall Cunningham, Jeff George. There was the other guy there who was in Minnesota. Brady had
Brad Johnson.
Then you go over to Oakland for a year or two. You had Jamarcus Russell trying to figure it out and throwing him the ball. It was just all around bad. He gets to New England.
My defense is this. I think Jerry Rice would have made all those quarterbacks better than what they were. And I think Jerry Rice in his prime with Tom Brady, they win a Super Bowl.
Well, if you look at Jerry Rice's best season as a pro, 1995, 122 catches, had the 1,848 yards. Half of that season was with Elvis Gerbach.
Yeah, Montana was hurt a lot. He also had some big games with Steve Bono.
Young had just retired. Young was getting ready to retire. Montana was gone in 1995.
Yeah, I know. 1995, Steve Young was hurt most of that season. Elvis Gerbach.
Right. He said Joe Montana.
Through to Jerry. Yeah, I know, but what he's saying is Joe Montana was hurt a lot during his career. And if you look back in the 80s, he had big games with Jeff Kemp at quarterback.
Yeah, remember this, Jerry Rice only played, 5 years with Joe Montana?
Yeah.
And
he was already
he also went to the
records.
Oakland Raiders at the end of his career and put up some big-time stats and helped him get to a Super Bowl.
Right.
And for what I'm asking Randy Moss to do, I don't need him to go over the middle. I don't need him taking deep drags in front of big linebackers. I need him to blow the top off the defense. He's a convertible. I need convertibles running.
Well, we're not asking Jerry Rice to do that either. Jerry Rice can be asked to do anything, and he'll do it.
Yeah, Jerry Rice can do anything. Randy Moss
can blow through double coverage.
Randy Moss, I'm sure he could have done it if he was asked to do that. Again, his job was to blow the top off the defense.
But if you're going to be the greatest of all time, you have to actually do these things, and you have to show up in big games. Randy Moss was a great player. I think Randy Moss could have been the greatest ever if he had a brain, if he had a work ethic. He had some of the greatest talent we will ever see in the league. I agree with that. But I would much rather have Larry Fitzgerald. But if you're going to talk about the greatest deep threat, I'd probably go Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones. If you're going to go talk about size and speed and strength and jumping ability, I'd rather have those guys. I'd rather have Terrell Owens, who had a tireless work ethic. Look what he did at the Super Bowl with his 9 catches, 132 yards on a broken ankle. Randy Moss is not that kind of guy. He does not play through difficult circumstances.
And partly, I'm just going to take him. Pure talent, I'm taking him. I know what I'm looking for in the receiver.
Pure talent.
I like Jerry Rice.
Yeah, but see, if you're going to coach a team, Jamel, you want a guy that can help you win a championship. Who gives a crap about numbers?
He could have helped you. He could have definitely helped win more championships. That one year in New England.
The 1 year in New England, what Super Bowl was it that the Patriots won?
Did not win. I mean, but look what it took for them.
But they won it this year with Julian Edelman.
That was a hell of a play. In order for you to even win that Super Bowl, the play that Eli had to make, that Tyree had to make, that was their Super Bowl to win.
Okay, I'm telling you this. Jerry Rice is not going to pretty much disappear in a Super Bowl the way Moss did. I mean, Jerry Rice is going to catch a couple touchdown passes, and David Tyree's not even going to be able to make that play where it'll matter.
I'm going to go. I got to check these stats here. I got to see what Jerry Rice did.
But by what standard? I mean, by any standard that you go, Jerry Rice is the best receiver that ever played this game. I mean, there's guys with more talent. There's guys with better 40 times. There's guys that can jump it. That does not matter. There will always be someone with more talent. It's about what you actually do on the field, and whoever had a better work ethic than Jerry Rice. I would take that over Randy Moss in a heartbeat. And Moss was a terrible teammate. He quit on your team. Jerry Rice don't quit on your team. He's going to lift the team out of the ashes.
Randy Moss walked off the field at least 2 times in his career before a game was over because he was mad because he wasn't getting the ball.
You could get in that guy's head and he'd shut right down.
Why would you not?
And Deion Sanders would have shut Randy Moss down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd have to see it.
Absolutely.
Not saying he couldn't. I'd have to see it.
Randy Moss was taken out of games plenty of time. He did not like it when you got physical with him.
Last
Jerry
game I
Rice
remember
could get you right through bump and run.
Was the Reeves game. The Reeves game at home. Pat the Jets. That's
Randy
the last
Moss
game I remember.
has the same temperament as Odell Beckham.
Exactly.
Another great receiver.
Amazing talent.
Great receiver.
Brain.
Except that if you can make Odell Beckham angry enough to get into a fight, with a kicking net, then he's useless.
Right.
And that's exactly how Randy Moss.
See, those fiery types. This is the thing. Jerry Rice was a fiery type. The thing is this: if you're picking out a football team, a professional football team in any professional football league, and you see a guy, you don't want him because that guy loses you games in big situations.
Exactly.
I mean, I
tell you this:
if I'm looking for a wide receiver for my team, and I see a guy that is like that, I don't care how good he is. I don't want him. I want guys that will go out and do whatever it takes to win the game. Those are great players. That's why the numbers don't lie thing. I think numbers lie all the time. You know, if you look at Brett Favre's career stats compared to John Elway, well, Favre's better. But you know what? When I get on YouTube and I put up the best 10 plays Brett Favre ever had, one of them's in a playoff game. When I do it with John Elway, 9 of them are in a playoff game. You got to make
I'll be honest with you. Randy Moss is basically Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens was denied entry into the National Football League Hall of Fame this year. He's really upset about it, but Terrell Owens was exactly the same guy. He was fiery. He was cocky. He would be easy to take out of games because you could get
I don't think Owens was.
So twisted.
No.
I don't think Owens was.
Owens was tougher
I think
than Moss.
As he said, played on a broken ankle. He played his ass off in the Super Bowl.
No,
and I don't think you've ever heard a teammate say that Terrell Owens
physically
did anything
tougher.
Well, he's a lot physically
tougher.
He was mentally
tougher. You don't think a teammate ever said anything bad about Terrell Owens? Terrell Owens was basically run out of the 49ers locker room for his attitude.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
but in a game on the field.
He played. You put it like this. You can't find a play like the catch that Owens made to beat the Packers in the playoffs. Moss never did that.
No. Rice did it several times. Several guys have done that. That is just not a Randy Moss type of a play. Randy Moss is all flashy. He's great in the regular season. You get him in a tough spot, a tough situation, he will shut down. He does not rise to the occasion. That's why he will never be the greatest of all time.
All right, we're going to go ahead and transition this since Matt's already screwed up us ever having Randy Moss on the show probably. And we are going to go. We're going to go to Chris's sport. which is baseball, which I wrote an article today about who was the greatest baseball player of all time, or who was greater, Babe Ruth or Barry Bonds. Chris, I'll let you start this one off.
All right. So this is something that Graham and I have actually discussed before on Out of Left Field. We've had this conversation at least once, and we have the conversation about Barry Bonds every time we talk about the Hall of Fame, because you will never hear me acquiesce to the idea that Barry Bonds should ever step a toe across the threshold of the Hall of Fame. In fact, I'm not the only person that feels that way. It is so permeated through professional baseball that if you play MLB The Show on PlayStation, they don't mention Barry Bonds or Pete Rose's names in the MLB records columns. It says San Francisco Giants 2007, Cincinnati Reds 1984. And then Rickey Henderson with the most stolen bases. They say his name because Rickey Henderson's not a jerk. But
yeah, Rickey Henderson's a jerk. He just didn't do steroids.
No, yeah. Right. He didn't do steroids. He didn't cheat.
Right.
So
he is a jerk, though.
So I digress. He is. I met him once. He's a jerk. I digress, though. So let's talk about Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds. First of all, let's go back to this idea that numbers don't lie, because Babe Ruth's career batting average of .342, his career slugging of .690 for an OPS of 1.164, a career OPS of 1.164. His career average was MVP style numbers in today's game. Of course, his 714 career home runs, his the only thing really going against him is 1,330 career strikeouts. But let's look at Barry Bonds and those same statistics. Barry Bonds' career batting average of .298, his career slugging of .607. He has an OPS for this career of 1.051. So those numbers obviously don't lie. Numerically, Babe Ruth is a better hitter. But let's take it a step further. Babe Ruth also used to be a pitcher, a 20-game winning pitcher. Also, he played the first 5 years of his career in the dead ball era. Babe Ruth set a Major League Baseball record in 1919 by hitting 29 home runs.
While the rest of the league hit way less, right?
While the rest of the league was in a situation where they were combining for an average of 3.4 runs per game. Not per team per game, per game. Babe Ruth hit 29 home runs. He turned around the next year in 1920, while they're still in the dead ball era technically, and hit 50 home runs. Unbefore seen in the history of sport, in the history of baseball. He hit 50 home runs that year. But Barry Bonds, the thing that, to me, that says Barry Bonds is not the greatest of all time, can never be considered the greatest of all time, besides the fact that Babe Ruth was an accomplished hitter, an accomplished pitcher, faced pitchers who were throwing 100 miles an hour, faced spitballs, curveballs. We're talking about pitchers who were legally allowed to alter the ball before they threw it to make it curve and twist and dive in ways that you will never see in a current Major League Baseball game. And throwing 100 miles an hour. You had all of that together, and Barry Bonds cheated. And that, despite what he did his entire career before 1999, in 1999 he made the decision to use steroids. And the decision to use steroids is not only the thing that's going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, I hope forever, but it is also the thing that makes me say that Barry Bonds can never, ever be considered the greatest of all time, because fully half of his home runs were while he was juiced. Yes, he had potentially Hall of Fame numbers prior to juicing. He was a stolen base leader. He was the first man, only man, in the 400-400 club. He was the first to the 40-40 club, but that wasn't good enough for him. So instead of working harder to catch guys like McGuire, who was juicing, or the kid who wasn't juicing, instead of working harder, he cheated. And that absolutely disbars him from any consideration as the greatest of all time.
All right, Jamel?
With that being said, as hard as that man would have worked, how do you top someone who's getting a pep boost every day? How? How do you top that guy with that? Like you said, he could have worked hard to catch McGuire. How do you catch someone who just hits themselves with a needle and go? You have to level the playing field. Pitchers are using steroids. Hitters are using steroids. Babe Ruth didn't play all the greatest players of his generation. For whatever reason he didn't play him, he didn't play him. He didn't go on those MLB Negro League tours. He didn't take them. He knew what would have happened.
Yeah, he did. He played multiple games against them. I looked it up today. There's actually 16 box scores from games he played against Negro League All-Star teams, and he batted .455 with 12 home runs in the 16 games.
I didn't see those box scores. I looked for that today versus Negro League. Didn't see that.
And the other thing is this, though. Was Josh Gibson a great player?
Absolutely.
Well, how do we know? He didn't play all the best competition. I mean, it goes both ways. It's neither Gibson nor Ruth's fault. And I do think that is a reason to doubt Ruth, though. But when you look at the games he played, and you can actually, Bill James did a big thing about it, where he broke into the games that he played against the Negro League. So actually, if you look online, you can actually find those box scores. Go ahead, Jamel.
Yeah, going through that. All right, again, before 2009 time All-Star, 8 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, 1-time home run league champion, okay? He was only in the home run league champion twice in his entire career. We did that before the juice as well as a 1-time RBI champion. For all the things you said that Ruth didn't do, he stole bases. He played great defense, hit the ball a ton. I felt he used the steroids personally to play 150, 160 games instead of 120, 130 games. It was so hard at the time.
Babe Ruth played 152-game seasons. I just want to throw that out there.
All right. Babe Ruth also didn't play as hard as Barry Bonds did. Didn't play in the field. Didn't play as hard in the field. Didn't have to cover as much ground.
He had to cover more ground because most baseball parks back then, I mean, you could get a center field with 450 feet.
Cavernous. He was park.
The center field at the center field for the Chicago Cubs in 1920 was 540 feet to the wall. You will never see a 540-foot center field in modern baseball, ever. And Babe Ruth used to hit balls over it.
I'm sure Barry Bonds would have hit balls over it before and after the steroids.
Barry Bonds never hit a 500-plus foot home run, not once in his career.
I'm sure he could have. With or without steroids, I'm sure he could have.
But he never did.
That's the problem with a lot of these arguments. You know, it's all based on, you know, what he might have done. You know, the thing about Babe Ruth to me, you know, I think the number, if you're just going to go pure numbers, forget the steroids, forget all that. I'm not dismissing the steroids at all. But, you know, I still think Babe Ruth is as great as any hitter there ever was. But to me, what really separates Babe Ruth is that pitching record that he had with the scoreless innings, and that'll never be matched. You'll never see a guy be Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds in the same guy, or you know, or any great pitcher and hitter is the same guy. I mean, there's just, to me, this is Babe Ruth's the greatest baseball player there ever was. I mean, I know that, yeah, it would have been, I would have liked to have seen him play against the Negro Leagues. I think that would have been, you know, better. But you can only play who you can play.
He did play against the Negro Leagues.
No, but I mean, like, in an official capacity with his Major League Baseball.
I think me and Matt's point is this. The fact that you throw in that Ruth was the best left-handed pitcher in baseball for a good 4 or 5 years, I mean, held World Series records up until recently, if he still doesn't. I think, plus you throw in the fact that Bonds was a lot better fielder, but Babe Ruth's fielding percentage was .970, so it wasn't like he was a terrible fielder. I mean, that would be the equivalent of a guy like Miguel Tejada in the last few years.
With that said, my argument would be Barry should get in. his stats say he should get in. Before the juice he gets in. After the juice, it just makes him more dangerous. It was a home run or a long single. I understand that. It is cheating. But if every other guy is cheating, how can we penalize this one guy?
Well,
those guys
I don't think Roger Clemens is getting
I don't think any of those guys should get in. I don't want Rafael Palmeiro in. I don't want Mark McGwire in.
I honestly
I don't want
those
any
players only
cheater.
deserve it.
I don't want any cheater in the Hall of Fame.
As well. I'm sure there's not every guy in the Hall of Fame isn't clean. I'm sure of it.
Well, we got to go on facts, though. I mean,
yeah, and Bonds was busted.
And by the way,
say Bonds did it. That say Bonds was doing it before
Barry
the juice and after the
career
juice.
fielding percentage is .981.
Yeah, 10 points higher than Babe Ruth.
Let's not act like Barry Bonds is some great magical left fielder. By the time he was juicing,
he's not Willie
couldn't
Mays.
even run anymore.
It's like those last 3 years in San Fran, they were terrible years. I understand that. They moved him out to left for a reason. But again, before that, when he was all around Barry Bonds, he was one of the best players I've ever seen. Not
Right, one of the best players I ever saw too, but that's not. I mean, the topic is
took it from him.
Was he? Yeah, I mean, the juicing actually shortened his career.
50 and 60 stolen bases to seasons of 0.
Yeah, and if you look at him from 1998 when the steroids started, his home runs went from an average of 33 a year to 49, 73, 46, 45, 45, and then he dropped off the face of the earth. So in the end, the steroids probably hurt his career more because he probably could have played a couple of years past that.
And his stolen bases did exactly the opposite, except that his stolen bases fell off a cliff in 1 year. 1 year, because he couldn't run anymore.
Yeah, so he went from the most complete player in baseball to the Randy Moss of baseball, which is he could do one thing. He could hit a home run.
With the exception of maybe Ken Griffey Jr.
Maybe.
Ken Griffey Jr.
I think Bonds was better than Griffey.
Baseball player than Barry Bonds.
I don't know. Bonds was pretty damn good, though.
Wait, Ken Griffey Jr. was keeping up with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa.
Huh?
And he wasn't juicing.
Well, McGwire and Sosa, neither one should be in the Hall of Fame either. I mean,
no,
what I'm saying is,
I don't want either one of those guys in.
I mean, because
Ken
McGwire
Griffey
and
Jr.
Sosa without that would not have been Hall of Famers probably anyways.
Ken Griffey Jr. kept up with them until the very end of that of that home run race.
Right.
Without juice.
56 and 98.
Just based on the fact that he has easily the most beautiful swing ever seen in the history of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, the greatest natural baseball player you'll ever see.
He's a complete ball player.
But he's not as good as Babe Ruth either because he couldn't pitch. See, I think that's where Babe Ruth. I think Babe Ruth always has that over everybody. I mean, who in the hell? Nobody. I mean, when he retired with 714 home runs, there was nobody within 400 home runs of that.
Yeah.
I mean, he did things that nobody had ever done before, and he did them naturally on hot dogs and beer the way God intended it to be, Jamel.
Lots of beer.
Maybe not the hot dogs. I'd better have the chicken wings than the beer.
Sometimes still drunk.
When you add the pitching stats in there, you can say, of course, greatest ever, but I'm just going off hitting, batting, fielding. I got to say, I'm still going to take Bonds. This is one of those situations I've still got to take him.
Well,
I'm going to take
I can tell you this. I think the better argument, but not as many people would have read the article, would be, is Babe Ruth better than Hank Aaron?
Yeah.
Or is Babe Ruth better than Willie Mays? Because to me, I'll take Hank Aaron and Willie Mays over about anybody I ever saw. I mean, the thing people forget about Aaron is Aaron's batting average. I mean, Aaron had almost 4,000 hits for his career too.
I'd take Hank Aaron in the category of hitters as the greatest hitter.
Yeah, but the best player I ever saw, even though it was just on film, was probably Willie Mays.
Let's not forget that Hank Aaron also still holds the MLB record for runs batted in at over 4,400.
Yeah.
So Hank Aaron.
I thought Bonds caught him. He didn't catch him?
Not in runs batted in, no.
No.
Wow, okay, I didn't know that.
No, Hank Aaron's the RBI king all time. And he was a complete hitter, Hank Aaron was. And, yes, I would take Hank Aaron as a better hitter than Babe Ruth. But again,
but when you throw in the pitching, that's the problem.
It's the pitching.
The pitch.
Yeah.
Right.
He spent his lifetime batting average was 305, though.
Yeah, he spent 5 years as a pitcher, and we're talking about these are seasons when he's winning 20-plus games, when he's pitching every 3 days, when he has an ERA under 1 in the World Series.
Right.
And he pitched 3 times.
Yeah, I think he threw 2 shutouts in the 1918 World Series, didn't he?
Two complete game shutouts.
Whitey Ford finally broke that scoreless inning streak, but that was in, 1961?
Madison Bumgarner broke it, too.
All right. Chris, question for you. Do you think that Bonds could have did that in Ruth's era and Ruth could have did that in Bonds' era? Do you think it would have been the vice versa? His dominance could have stretched in any era. Do you think it's that?
Okay, so this is one of the arguments. This is one of the arguments that you hear a lot, right? Because the era question is about pitching, right? Because
hitting, I don't know if Ruth could have kept up with a lot of guys today.
Yeah, but I think real quick to interject there, Jamel. I think the one thing you're missing is if you move Babe Ruth, move Babe Ruth ahead 60 years, he's probably going to be lifting weights. He's going to be doing all that stuff. And, I mean, he actually transcended. He was basically a modern player. If you look at his stats compared to the guys he played against, he was a modern player playing back then.
But let's talk about Babe Ruth and pitching, okay? Because the question is always, could Babe Ruth hit modern pitching? The slider, the slurve, the knuckle, all those pitches existed in 1914, by the way. The curveball and the slider were popular pitches when Babe Ruth came into the league. So let's look at 1920, Babe Ruth's first 50 home run season. Right? Babe Ruth hit against a guy named Walter Johnson.
The big train.
Big train, yeah.
Walter Johnson is probably the first 100-plus mile-an-hour pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball.
He was amazing.
Easily 100 miles an hour. There were guys who would go up to the plate and say they could not see the ball when Walter Johnson threw a fastball. And through the magic of technology, we found that he is, in fact, at just over 100 miles an hour. In fact, he's basically the same speed as Nolan Ryan at 101.
Which is crazy.
So, and that's in 1915. I mean, he was doing that in 1915, 1919, 1920. Add to that, he also had a huge breaking curveball. Why was his curveball? Why did it have so much break? Well, because he was allowed to spit on it. He was allowed to chafe it. He was allowed to do anything he wanted to change the surface of that ball and throw it in such a way that it would dance and dip and dive and do all kinds of crazy things. And he also threw a knuckleball. Let's talk about a guy named Bob Feller, who was the first Major League pitcher to actually be recorded. His speed was actually recorded by technology in 1930, and he was throwing 98.6 miles an hour, body temperature. So, yes, Babe Ruth absolutely, positively could hit modern pitching, without a doubt. And add to that the fact that the team that he played against on the Boston Red Sox in the 1918 World Series had the highest batting average that baseball had ever seen. Had one of the highest batting averages for the season that baseball had ever seen up to that point. They outscored all of their opponents by miles. Now, we are still talking about the dead ball era, so Babe Ruth had the benefit of being able to do all of those things to the ball as well. But Babe Ruth was no slouch. Babe Ruth was in the high 90s. Babe Ruth was throwing a curveball. Babe Ruth was throwing a knuckleball. So, yes, Babe Ruth could strike out batters in today's league. Absolutely. If Sergio Romo can be, for 2 or 3 years, be one of the most effective closers in Major League Baseball, especially in high-stress situations, throwing an 85-mile-an-hour slider and an 89-mile-an-hour fastball. An 89-mile-an-hour fastball, which, by the way, froze one of the greatest hitters on the Detroit Tigers, Miguel Cabrera, to win the 2012 World Series, the year that Miguel Cabrera won the MVP and the Triple Crown, was frozen by an 89-mile-an-hour fastball. Yes, Babe Ruth could strike out modern hitters. So, yes, Babe Ruth could survive in today's baseball climate.
But do we still talk about being the great? Do we talk about him getting on a plane to San Diego, flying up to Seattle the day before a game, waking up, having a doubleheader? Are we thinking today's science? What we know?
Well, what about this, though? Right now, if you look in 1915, they were taking a train. They didn't get a nice hotel. They were in a train.
Right.
They'd get on the train, go overnight, and go play a game.
They didn't fly. See, you can fly anywhere in the continental United States in 5 hours. Anywhere to anywhere in the continental United States in 5 hours. It took 3 days to get to St. Louis by train in 1919. 3 days. And then you had to.
And there was actually a lot more doubleheaders back then than what there was when Bonds played.
And a lot more complete games.
They played, and that's the thing. There was no such thing as relievers at that time.
Right. That's the other thing.
Pitchers
you're talking
played
about pitching.
Complete games.
You just don't even see complete games now.
Which actually, to me, though, would be something that would show that Bonds.
On top of all that.
Bonds when he gets specialists. This guy's hitting guys throwing 140 pitches every 3 days. I mean, there's a lot that can take away and be added for both, but I just can't say hands down. And when
I can see Bonds doing well back then.
When we throw his pitching in, absolutely. I throw Bonds back then probably put the home run record. Probably put the home run record in a place that we don't even see.
Well, how would Bonds feel about getting hit by a lot of pitches, though? I mean, I know he walked a lot, but back then, it'd stick in your ear. You hit too many home runs. Ruth got hit a lot.
But
not saying that Bonds couldn't take that, because I think he could.
How often did Barry Bonds fly from San Francisco to Miami to play the Marlins, and then when he got there, drink 14 beers, eat 4 hot dogs, go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and wake up at 8 to play a ball game? 0.
Yeah.
0.
So Babe Ruth has modern-era record MVP-style stats, and he did it drunk and on fatty foods.
Yeah, but a lot of times I do a lot of things better when I'm drunk, so
if you
not anymore. I haven't drank a beer in like 4 months.
If you can convince me that Anheuser-Busch makes a performance-enhancing drug for anything other than sitting in an easy chair and watching football on a Sunday afternoon, then I will concede Barry Bonds. But beer is not a performance-enhancing drug.
Well, I'll tell you, if you saw me play Super Tecmo Bowl on it compared to not on it, you would not think that. And I know that Matt has heard these stories from Brian Schmidt when we coached together down in Owensboro, so he can vouch for me.
Super Tecmo Bowl, is that the one where you could snap the ball, run all the way back to your own end zone, and then throw it all the way across?
Yeah, it was the realistic game, not like this Madden crap.
Yeah, it was the good one. All right. None of this Madden crap.
All right, so we're talking football, so we're going to transition to football, and I'm going to jump over on Jamel's side on this one, I think. But, Chris, before we started talking about Tom Brady not being the greatest quarterback of all time. So we're going to do a little Brady versus Montana. And actually, I'm going to let Matt start it off.
Who's starting it off?
You are.
You are.
Oh, I'm starting it off. Okay. Well, I think Mike already knows where I stand on this. I think that's why he's setting this up the way he is. I don't have a problem with acknowledging Tom Brady because of the 5 Super Bowls. I really don't. I'm a lifetime Niner fan. I think Montana, for 30 years, sat on top of the mountain as the best quarterback that we've ever seen. I wish he could have played a lot longer. Given the circumstances, he did everything that he did for the 49ers in a much shorter span of time, 2 strike seasons, back surgery, and a number of other injuries to get where he got, and still had some of the best playoff runs we've ever seen. And some of the numbers that he has, Brady still has not surpassed, or it takes him several more games to do so. That doesn't really detract from Brady. I'm stating at this stage just how good Montana was, especially in those 88, 89 playoff runs. Just some of the best runs we've ever seen. the 127.8 quarterback rating in the Super Bowl will never be touched with 11 touchdowns and no picks. But on the other hand, though, you have to give it to Brady because, you know, it's a different era. Obviously, you can't touch the quarterback as much, but he's played a long time, and he's gotten to 7 Super Bowls and won 5 of them. He really could be 7 for 7. I mean, they also could have won one less if they, you know, maybe Marshawn Lynch gets the ball. But regardless of all the ifs and the buts, the guy won 5 Super Bowls in an era that you're just not supposed to have dynasties anymore. And to me, when I watch Brady and Montana, I watch them both. I've watched both of their entire careers.
Yeah, they look a lot alike.
I feel like they're very, very similar. To me, this argument, no matter where you fall on this argument, I would really hope that we'd all agree that the distance between whoever you're siding with, I mean, it's so close.
Brady didn't do it in dynastic fashion.
Okay, there's something to be said for that, but I don't think that would detract.
You know what the meaning of the phrase dynasty is?
I realize that it took 10 more years.
Well, I would say a dynasty is going to 6 or 7 straight conference championship games and winning a couple Super Bowls. I mean,
Joe Montana.
If you look at Montana's dynasty, though, you had 82 where they had a losing season immediately after 81.
Yeah, he did have that
Joe Montana won 4
playoff
Super Bowls
losses in there.
Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls in 8 years.
Yeah.
That's
Terry Bradshaw won 4 in 6 years, and you don't defend him.
Terry Bradshaw, I would defend Terry Bradshaw, except I don't think Terry Bradshaw is better than Joe Montana.
Well, but he did it quicker. He was more dynastic. Now, the one thing that I always
he had a dynasty, yes.
This is the thing, and I know this is where you're going about the cheating. And I wrote an article about it. I've got all the documents from the NFL here, and we're going to go through this real quick just because it really pisses me off that people accuse him of cheating more than what other people do when he didn't. I mean, you talk about Spygate, all right? First off, every team in the NFL has scouts that match the players they're drawing up to the hand signals. They have somebody sit up in the box and try to steal those. That's why you see teams trying to cover up their signals. Nobody in the history of the NFL has ever been fined for it, except for the Patriots. All the Patriots did was find a more surefire way to do it. They videotaped it against the Jets so they could go back and look at it. And I'll guarantee you this. Coaches like Jimmy Johnson and John Madden also admitted to doing it, but nobody calls them cheaters. All right? You look at the allegations that the Patriots videotaped the Rams practice before they pulled off one of the greatest upsets in Super Bowl history.
Not even true.
It's not true. I mean, the NFL puts out all these accusations, all this bullshit, because they want to swamp somebody and make them look bad. But following the accusation, and I've got the papers here, I can send them to you, the NFL investigators immediately looked into the case and found that indeed the Patriots video staff was at the Superdome that day, but the video equipment had neither battery packs nor power supply. The Patriots official, Matt Walsh, the man who made the allegations at the walkthrough, was quoted by a Rams player as saying, "We should have taped that." Walsh told Goodell that there was never a tape at a Rams walkthrough. This is the guy that, the NFL tried to say had the tape. He told the Rams, or told the Commissioner Goodell, that they never taped the walkthrough. And during the NFL investigation, Walsh admitted that nobody ever even asked him to tape it. So there was no proof. But the NFL and the fans still act like it happened because it follows the NFL narrative of good guy, bad guy, which sells tickets, which gets people to watch stuff. You get Deflategate. Deflategate is so stupid and asinine that I can't even believe people still bring it up. Number one, all the evidence the NFL had was purely circumstantial. Number two, if you've ever heard of the ideal gas law, that proves that the deflated balls would have naturally gotten pressured due to the weather. The thing was this. It was also discovered, if you look at the court documents, the Colts balls had deflated too. They didn't deflate as much as the Patriots, but when you look at when the balls were checked, it was cold out that day. When the balls were brought in, the NFL immediately checked the Patriots' balls. That didn't sound right, but they did. And then, on top of that, the NFL did not check the Colts balls until after they'd spent 15 minutes in the locker room warming up, and then they checked them. So, of course, they hadn't deflated as much. And the thing that really bothers me is the company that the NFL used to make their scientific claims was a company called Exponent. Exponent was a company that just in the last 3 years has been in court cases trying to prove that secondhand smoke and asbestos are safe for you. And if you go on YouTube, there's an MIT professor by the name of John Leonard who has posted a video which is 15 minutes, which will convince you it was nothing but a witch hunt against Brady and the Patriots. I mean, none of this stuff. It was made up. And you could say, well, they can suspend, fine you, do whatever the hell they want with you in the NFL. The NFL is a big corporation. They don't give a shit about their players. They don't mind to fine a player and to suspend a player, even if he did nothing wrong. Let's face it, Ray Rice is only out of the league because a videotape popped up. It wasn't because the NFL cared what he did to his wife. It's when the videotape popped up, then the NFL looked bad for not getting rid of him. So then they got rid of him. But, Jamel?
Can I just say, can we all agree
Chris. Sorry.
Can we all agree that we don't want to hear the phrase the NFL check their balls ever again?
Wait, no, because when they check your balls, they're not going to check them in the proper way. And if you're having your balls checked and somebody just does something the wrong way, it can be painful.
That needle is painful.
So, Jamel, go ahead. You could talk about checking balls, or you could talk about Brady, Montana.
All right, well, I'm still a few years off from getting my balls checked by my doctor. But, I can't
it ain't the balls getting checked you got to worry about, Jamel. It's the other side.
Oh, boy. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say this about Tom. It's a close argument, all right? They can be 1A and 1B, but I'm going to say Tom's 1A for a reason. He got it done with less. And we made the argument about Moss being the one that won it. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but he wins one this year with Amendola, a former lacrosse player, and Hogan, and Julian Edelman. I mean, come on, man. It's when you look at the numbers, you look at how he grew as a quarterback. When he first came in, I felt he had to look over to Belichick every time he wanted to check out of a play. So when he kind of turned into his own Peyton Manning, that offense was his. You can have a revolving door in the middle of that line, center at both the guard positions at center, revolving door at the receiver. Until he gets Gronk, you can't really say he has a just true dynamic weapon out there. He got it done.
I think Edelman's a hell of a receiver. I think Edelman, to me, is another version of Steve Smith who doesn't get the credit he deserves either.
I love Edelman.
Yeah.
Love Edelman. Just like Steve Smith, though, we don't include him in the greatest conversation. And their current
I
season
can tell you this.
time.
I would take Steve Smith or Julian Edelman over Randy Moss, but that's a completely different conversation, so go ahead.
All right. Again, what he got done with David Patton, what he got done with David Givens, what he got done with Troy Brown, Jermaine Wiggins, Joseph Furrey, his running backs, Kevin Falk. I mean, what he got done with these guys, I just don't know if Montana could have done it, and if he could have overcome their shortcomings.
Well, I'm going to say this real quick. Even though I'm on your side,
Mike, you and I are going to say the same thing. So you go
I mean, do you know who the do you know who the put it like this? Do you know how many Super Bowls he won with Jerry Rice?
I believe he won 2.
Yeah, he won 2 with Rice. Now the other 2, who was the running backs on the Super Bowl 16 Niners team?
Ricky Waters.
I would say Roger Craig, but I'm not too sure.
No, in 1981 it was
Roger
Bill
Craig.
Ring, Earl Cooper, and Ricky Patton, correct, Matt?
Yeah, Ricky Patton was the leading rusher with 500 yards.
Yeah,
and
the second leading rusher was Joe Montana, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah. They had no running game to speak of. They had a decent offense, but they won largely because of their defense and just clutch quarterback play. Over probably Dallas and Cincinnati were probably both better teams, but it was Montana's clutch quarterback play and the defense that got those games won for them.
I've seen Brady go 14-2, and he's definitely beaten better teams than those Patriot teams he jogged out there. And he did it
I'm not saying
over.
I'm just saying Joe Montana
I think Matt's
could do it
just
too.
Saying that Montana kind of did the same thing his first year.
Right. And you know, in the '84 team, it was a better offense because they had a running game. But the wide receivers were still, it was Dwight Clark, Freddie Solomon, and Russ Francis. They're good receivers, but I wouldn't say greatest of all time, caliber players there. But they also had a very good defense. And don't forget, the Patriots always had a great defense.
All right, well, let's get off this. I'm tired of defending Joe Montana because he's an asshole because he stole two Super Bowls from my Bengals. Chris, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to stick with Joe Montana. Joe Montana played 40 fewer games than Tom Brady did. Completion rate about the same, touchdown rate about the same. Had he played the same number of seasons as Tom Brady's played, his numbers would probably be comparable. And
yeah, I agree with that.
Had he played the same number of seasons that Tom Brady's played, he would probably have 7 or 8 Super Bowl titles. I think that
yeah, we're going to go into the what-if game.
Wait a second, though, because you got to do this. The guy that followed Montana was Steve Young, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback, too, and he only won 1 with that group.
I think it's easy to say.
Yeah, I think Montana could have won more.
If Montana was at the helm in 1994, they still win that Super Bowl. Obviously, that would be 5.
And I don't think they beat those Cowboys teams.
I think they do.
Why?
I think Montana's definitely a better quarterback than Troy Aikman. I think Jerry Rice is definitely a better receiver than Deion Sanders is a corner. Absolutely.
And Jimmy Johnson is definitely a better coach than George Seifert. And the Cowboys' offensive line may have been the greatest offensive line of all time. And Emmitt Smith was a better running back than anything the Niners had. And Roger Craig was a great player, great running back, but he wasn't there in 94. It was Ricky Waters, who was a great player in his own right, but he wasn't Emmitt Smith. And, I mean, you had Alvin Harper as the number 2 receiver. Troy Aikman, the only reason nobody will bring up Troy Aikman is because his teams were so great, he never really had a chance to come from behind in a Super Bowl or a playoff game. They just kicked everybody's ass.
I don't know. I think Joe Montana beats that Cowboys team.
Probably they had to have a little more around them as well. The defense was sluggish in 92 and 93. That was a big reason why they weren't able to win in 92 and 93. Losing Charles Haley was really big.
Yeah, that Cowboys offensive line would have just dominated them, I think. Because they did dominate
well, it did.
And having Joe Montana wasn't going to change that. Because actually Joe Montana was a pocket passer by then. He's not going to run around like Steve Young could to keep him in the game even. Yeah,
but Steve Young didn't stay in the game. He got hurt all the time.
Well, he stayed in the whole game in 92. And if I remember right, in 93 or 94, Bernie Kosar.
We're talking about a Cowboys team that won in 94 and 95, not 92.
The Cowboys won it all in 92, 93, and 95.
Yeah, the 95 team I think they could beat. 92 and 93 would have been tougher because the Niners' defense just really wasn't as good. They were giving up a lot of yards. I think they could have won in 92 had Guy McIntyre not held on early in that game when they got the 65-yard touchdown. That could have really helped, swing a lot of momentum to the Niners. But even so, Dallas just had a better defense, and the Niners just did not have the defense to stop Emmitt Smith in the run game. But the 95 team, I think that to me was still a very good Dallas team, but they were beatable, and the Niners even beat them, and they were 5-4 with Elvis Gerbach.
They did not win in 92. They won in 93, 94,
they won in 92. 96. No, they won in
93,
that was January.
96.
No,
that was January. It's the 92 Cowboys, right? Because it's the 94 49ers. They won it in January of 95.
Yeah, it was 92 season. 91, the Cowboys lost 31-6 to the Lions in the playoffs.
Right.
Which would have been 92 in the playoffs, but they won it 92, 93, 95. And if the case can also be made that if Jimmy Johnson doesn't get fired, the Cowboys win in 94, 95, and 96.
It's possible. It is possible because Johnson, I think Dallas definitely did take a hit when Johnson was gone. Barry Switzer was nowhere near as good of a coach as Jimmy Johnson. So it's possible because, as good as the Niners were in 94, that Dallas team was still really good.
All right, Jamel?
That Dallas team could have played keep away and pounded that ball down their throats. With that O-line with moves blocking, with Jay Novacek out there, tight end, they could have pounded that ball down their throats all day long. The play action, you have Irvin going over the middle. He didn't mind doing the dirty work on that offense. He blocked his ass off. I just can't see it.
I could see the 85 or 89 Niner teams having a chance to beat them. But I can't see the early 90s teams beating them.
Well, the 94
by the way,
team was
Michael
really
Irvin,
good. But
Michael Irvin's a better receiver than Randy Moss, too.
I'll give you that. You know what? I'll give you that because Michael had no problem doing the dirty work, and he still put his numbers up. I respect the guy who does that.
Yeah, and he won Super Bowls because of it. If he'd have played like Moss, that team wouldn't have been as successful.
No,
yeah,
but he wasn't better than Jerry Rice.
Michael Irvin. No,
Michael Irvin wasn't better than Jerry Rice.
No,
so
he wasn't.
He's better than Randy Moss, but he's not better than Jerry Rice. Then the Jerry Rice question is over.
I had a feeling that was coming. You walked into that, Jamel.
Well, I did, but Jerry Rice's last 5-6 years, he was just a mentor. When you look at the stats, he was putting up 600, 700 yards. He did have a 1,000-yard season in there for one of those Raider teams, but
right.
again,
so he was just a mentor,
and he was just to see a guy hanging on. Just see a guy hanging on. Just hanging on.
He wasn't putting up numbers, and yet still holds touchdown and receiving yard records.
Absolutely. He was just still playing. Just padding those stats.
He's not putting up numbers. He's not putting up numbers.
Still padding 600-700 yards. You do that 6 or 7 times over.
His career. It means during the bulk of his career, he was putting up untouchable numbers.
All right, Jamel, just so you know, 2001 for the Raiders, he had 1,139 yards. In 2002, he had 1,711. In 2003, he had almost 900.
He had 1,700 yards. Is what year?
In 2001 for the Raiders, 2001 and 2002, his first 2 years for the Raiders, he averaged 1,200 yards receiving, and in 2003, he had almost 900. His only bad year was his last year in 2004, where he was 429.
At 41 years older.
For the Seahawks?
His last year?
Yeah. Seahawks was
that's
his last
year.
I'm liking to think those last 6-7 years, he touched 1,000 twice, maybe.
His last 6 or 7 years would take it back to, 97? 97 he was hurt most of the year. 98 he was
98 he had 1,000. He was the oldest guy to hit 1,000 yards.
3,000-yard seasons and 3 over 800-yard seasons in his last 7 years.
That was over the age of 35. He was the oldest guy.
98 he puts up 1,100. 01 he puts up 1,100. 2002 he puts up 1,200.
Yeah, and the other years he puts up more than 800 yards 3 times, which for a guy that's almost 40 years old is pretty damn good.
It was also the guy getting majority of the love from Rich Gannon as well. You force the ball to a guy, he's going to get the stats.
Well, and that's why Randy Moss got his stats. On the Vikings, is the only guy that had to throw it to, except for when they had Chris Carter there.
Wait a minute. I'm pretty sure the Oakland Raiders had another receiver in 2001.
I know, they had Randy Moss, I thought.
They had Tim Brown, Ricky Dudley, Charlie Garner, lots of guys.
Yeah, I was trying to remember that Hall of Fame receiver. I was trying to remember the name of that Hall of Fame receiver that wore number 81. Tim Brown. So
and he played with
Gannon
Andre
threw to
Rice.
Tim Brown every bit as much as he threw to Jerry Rice.
That's why he was MVP in 2002, because Charlie Garner, Jerry Rice, and Tim Brown caught ridiculous amounts of passes.
And Charlie Garner. I forgot about
because actually, let's see. Nah, I don't think Moss wasn't a Raider until 2005.
Yeah, Moss was a Raider in 2005, and he was just not anything close.
He had 1,000 yards. He had 1,000 yard receiver in his 2 years there.
Yeah.
In 2006 he tapped out.
When Al Davis used to call down and make the calls from the press box, he would tell guys what he wanted to see. He still put up 1,000. So
except for the next year when he put up 553, and it was only his 8th year in the career, or 8th year in the league.
He brought the pillow and the blanket down to the sideline because he was done with that. He had to go to sleep on those fools,
Yeah.
The worst owner in the history of professional sports.
Al Davis?
Al Davis.
No way. He's one of the greatest owners in the history of professional sports.
Are you high?
All I know about Al Davis is this. He was a great football coach who built the Raiders into a dynasty with Madden. He also was very instrumental on the AFL-NFL merger. When he got old, when he got a little senile, he was a bad owner.
Repeatedly. He screwed all of his fans.
From 2002 on, he was a bad owner. But other than that, the guy won.
We're going to be in
Oakland. His teams won.
Oakland loves us, but we're going to go to L.A. L.A. loves us, but we're going to go back to Oakland.
Yeah, because he's getting paid. You know what? Every NFL owner does that. Every NFL owner. That's why you have teams move, because if the city won't give them money, that's what happens.
Which other team has moved 3 times in 10 years?
What's that got to do with it? Yeah, because he didn't get the money. He didn't get his stadium.
None
and
other
they still
team.
don't have their stadium.
Zero.
Well, yeah. You've had St. Louis move twice in 20. And you know what? If votes go different ways, you might have had that with other teams. I mean, that's an NFL problem in and of itself that is caused by basically a poorly run league.
Debate we need to have. On next week's show, we should talk about why billionaire owners should never get money from cities to build.
Oh, yeah. I wrote an article about that.
I totally agree with that.
Disgusting. It's like Jerry Jones.
Would we even have a debate?
No, there's no debate. Jamel, is there any debate there?
No, there's no debate. I can't ever make a debate.
We need to have Graham on then. We need to have Graham on then because Graham will.
Graham believes that?
Graham, He and I got into an argument on out of left field.
And the one thing that I've noticed. So, number one, that's why you called a show Out of Left Field, because of Graham?
He and I got into an argument on Out of Left Field because I said that the Marlins owner is garbage. Absolute garbage.
Terrible.
He wins a World Series to build his team's value, and then he dumps all of his players. Then he builds a good team to build his team's value so that Miami will give him almost $500 million to build a stadium, and in fact, I think they ended up giving him like $300 million of that between Miami and Dade County. And he built the stadium, and then the next season he dumped all his players again, and then he builds his team up almost back to a respectable team, and then starts to sell off again this last off season, and now he's dumping the team.
Jeez.
It's textbook value building. He bought that team for $180 million, $190 million, and sold it for $1.6 billion.
So that makes him a good owner to me, right?
Because he had a $500 million stadium that it was paid for by the people of that county that he could throw in to sweeten that deal.
Yeah, but you know what? If you're running a big corporation, Chris, that's kind of what big corporations do, no matter where they are.
Right, and I'm not saying that he's a bad owner, or Al Davis was a bad owner from the standpoint of corporate money-making ability, or even the ability to build a team. I'm saying that the mark of a good owner is an owner who understands and respects his fan base. And neither Al Davis nor the owner of the Marlins do that. This is the same problem that the Sacramento Kings had when they were owned by those billionaire brothers who owned casinos.
The Maloofs.
Right, the Maloofs. That's back when I was born and raised in Sacramento. I lived there when they were there. And they had those
Mike, maybe this is a topic for next time.
Yeah, definitely a topic for next time. And it's the one thing that I have learned tonight is now Chris is hooked on this show, and we'll be back every week. Correct, Chris?
I'll be back as much as I can.
Because Chris likes to argue, it sounds like.
What? I'm a rhetorician.
All right, final
rhetoric
words.
is my
final words. We'll let you go first, Chris.
Yes, I do
final
like to
words,
argue.
Chris.
Rhetoric is my concentration in my undergraduate degree, and will be my concentration in my graduate degree. So argumentation is basically my life. I'll be back
Matt
as
will
much
tell
as
you I'm the
possible.
same way, and I didn't get a degree in it. I just argue all the time about everything.
And the thing that brought me on the show tonight was the Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds thing, and I absolutely stand by everything that I said about Babe Ruth, greatest player of all time.
All right, Jamel, final words?
I'm still standing by Brady Moss being the greatest player. My eyes is open by Chris in terms of the greatest player, Babe Ruth. I never really factor in his pitching, honestly. I never think of Babe Ruth the pitcher. I always think of Babe Ruth the batter, Babe Ruth the hitter. Well, final words, Moss, yes. Bonds, I'm a little iffy now.
But wait, you said that Michael Irvin was better than Randy Moss.
Well, I said Michael Irvin was better than Jerry Rice.
What?
You said Randy Moss.
He did everything that you're supposed to do.
Re-listen to the show. That's all right. Matt, final word?
I will.
Well, obviously enjoy. I love arguing too, and love good debate and good discussion. I really don't understand how after all this discussion we could still be thinking Randy Moss is even close to Jerry Rice or even Michael Irvin. Yeah. But that's all right. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I liked, I thought we had a good Brady Montana discussion, and look forward to future shows.
Most definitely. And remember, you can catch Matt with Dexter Carter, former 49er great, on the weekly San Francisco 49ers show. Jamel, I think, is going to be doing our Chicago Bears show with Tom Poland, so you want to catch him there. Of course, Chris Furrey, and I'm going to spell it with just one R from now on, so it's correct. Correct? One R?
2 R's.
2 R's. Well, I thought I was putting
even
2
I know
R's.
that.
All right.
Well, it used to be.
Just text me and remind me before I post this show.
Furrey, Furrey.
All right. And then, of course, you can catch Chris with Graham on Out of Left Field. They've had some great guests like Adnan Burke, who was on a couple weeks ago. Great show. They had Aubrey Huff this last week. So make sure you check that out on thegruelingtruth.net, where you can find all our shows, all of our articles. You'll be able to hear this weekend. I had a NFL Legends show with former Notre Dame National Championship quarterback, 1966. Terry Hanratty, I forgot his name, ain't that a bitch? But Terry Hanratty was on the show tonight. It was a great show, talk about his time at Notre Dame. And then he was also with the Pittsburgh Steelers as Terry Bradshaw's backup quarterback for 2 Super Bowl rings. And also he played on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1976, which was kind of polar opposites of the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s. Make sure you check out all of our shows on iHeart, iTunes, TuneIn, Google Music, anywhere you find sports podcast, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Chris Furrey, Jamel Legister, and I nailed your name every time tonight, I think, Matt Andruscavage, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.